Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today in Chaos Tactics I'm looking at the Chaos Knights faction focus and looking at the new Abominant, the Despoiler, the Desecrator we have seen weapons for, and also comparing all the rules with the Imperial Knights. So with no further ado, let's get started. So today, the 22nd of May, I'm sorry if my voice is a bit raspy today, I'm a bit under the weather. But as far as Chaos faction focus are going, we only have the Thousand Suns left. And so today, as I said, the Chaos Knights faction focus, looking at the army rules, the revealed data sheets, then the Despoiler weapons damage output. There is a lot of weapons for the Despoiler as currently 9th. And then looking also at the new Abominant and Desecrator, and then finally pitting a Desecrator versus the Canis Rex, a Big Knight versus Big Knight, and who has the advantage there. So let's take a look. So starting off with the Chaos Knights army rules, the army rule is the Harbingers of Dread, like we have today. As many expected, the army rule is going to be affecting the leadership again, basically the Battleshock tests, and furthermore, also from round 3 onwards, you will also be benefiting from enemies being battle-shocked. So we have from battle round 1, the enemy units within 12 inches of all your Chaos Knights will be having -1 modifier to the Battleshock and leadership tests, and from the 3rd round onwards you get +1 to wound if you are attacking a Battleshocked target, and -1 to be hit, also quite nice, but only from the 3rd round if your enemy again is Battleshocked. The detachment rule also feeds into this Battleshock, so you can force enemies to take a Battleshock test if they are below their starting strength and they are within 12 inch of the Chaos Knight model. So that's quite good as well. So the rules work well together and well thought in this respect. Less choices for the Harbingers of Dread, that also makes it maybe a bit easier to play. Simpler rules. But the question is, of course, like leadership and morale in current edition, how often can you bypass? How many armies can, let's say, have modifiers and rerolls for the Battleshock test? How often will this be in effect? Also, it forces the knights, or at least to send some Wardogs, to move within 12 inch of the enemy to make them to add these modifiers. And the knights in general are not as durable in melee as they are versus range shooting. No mention today, unfortunately, about allying Dreadblades, because I think a lot of the Chaos factions would benefit from having a nice Chaos Knight or some Wardogs added to their armies. So looking at the Despoiler datasheet that was revealed, now we can see that the Big Knights, the Abhorrent class, have quite similar profiles as the Canis Rex Imperial Knights, so seems like the Big Knights will be movement 10 inches, toughness 12, 22 wounds down from 24, and 3+ save, and the 5+ involve versus range with objective control 10, and they are also degrading at 7 wounds, being -1 to hit there, and only getting objective control 5. So very similar profile, and we saw the same profile for the Abominant, so it looks like safe bet to say that the Big Knights will have this basic profile. The Despoiler, as today, has lots of weapons. However, when I glance through all these weapons, there are some very many attacks. AP reduced a bit, damage going a little bit up and down, but they, compared to some of the other models we have seen, less amount of the weapons have sustained hits, devastating wounds, and special rules like that can increase the damage output. The Seething Hatred gives the Despoiler one reroll to hit or wound per phase, so that can come in handy. Of course, using it for the most, let's say, lethal weapon that you have. And he has a 9-inch aura, giving +1 to the Battleshock test for Wardogs. He doesn't help himself with this. And with all these weapons, I'll show you the weapon damage output in a couple of slides. Now looking at the new model for the 9th edition, the Knight Abominant, really exciting to see what happens to a Psyker unit in the 10th edition. So we see the same stat line as the other Big Knights we have seen, with a toughness 12 and 22 wounds. And now we have the shooting weapons, the Volkite Combustor, strength 12 and being devastating wounds, Diabolus Heavy Stabber, becoming still a 36-inch weapon, but it only fires 3 shots at range, but it's rapid firing at 18 inches, getting 6 shots. The Electroscourge increases to strength 10, and with AP -2, damage 3, as we will see soon, that's quite a good anti-Terminator weapon. And then you have the Bale Mace giving extra attacks instead of D3 today, giving 3 attacks. And now the main changes for the Abominant comes in the psychic powers. Previously, you could select powers from let's say 6 to choose from, but now you have the fixed 2 powers. The Vortex Terror at the start of the shooting phase. The enemy must take a Battleshock test. One enemy you select within 12 inches. Again, you have to be close to make them afraid of you. And then the Warp Storms at the end of the movement. You roll 1 dice for each enemy unit within 9 inches of this model. On a 3+, you deal D3 mortal wounds. That can come in handy if your Abominant comes close to a lot of enemy units. But it seems no longer possible, let's say, to buff himself with the Feel No Pains or giving these auras for the Wardogs. He doesn't have auras for the Wardogs, giving them maybe 6+ Feel No Pain or something like this. So a bit of a pity from the psychic perspective. I think it's a bit of a pity, and maybe some things to come for the Thousand Suns. Now looking at the Desecrator weapons and the stats that were previewed as extra weapons, we see the Laser Destructor. We have strength 80 now, hitting on a 2+. No special rules for this one, but getting up to 3 attacks, not 2 as it was, let's say, previously, and you had to upgrade with a relic, the Diamonus laser. The damage goes from D3 +6 to D6 +3. So on average, you get less damage per attack, but the 3 attacks will, of course, help. We don't know if the Desecrator, what aura he has. We don't know if he also gets some free rerolls like the Despoiler. And then they selected to show us the Warp Strike Claw. And I think Games Workshop is becoming a bit sloppy there, because the stats already were available to us from the Despoiler datasheet. So no changes here. The strike attack is strength 20 now, so wounding almost everything on a 2+, but the big knights on a 3+, and a hefty damage 8. The sweep 8 attacks, and this is also quite a good anti-Terminator weapon. Strength 10 will be rolling a wounding on 2+ for the normal Terminators, 3+ on Blight Lords, AP -2, forcing them to take their invuln 4+, and 3 flat damage. And then we see one of the, unfortunately we didn't get any Wardog preview here. It would be nice to see some of the Wardogs instead of 2 big knights, but anyway, we see one of the stratagems that you can select 2 Wardogs and 1 enemy unit, and your Wardogs get sustained hits, 1 ability, and if the enemy is Battleshock, then your sustained triggers from 5+ to hit. So 5s and 6s give extra hits. So that can be quite handy using for the Wardogs. All the Despoilers weapons damage output. I am not assuming here that the enemy is in Battleshock after turn 3, and I'm not counting the 1 free reroll, either hit or wound. This will increase the damage a little bit, but here I think you get the choice. In this table you see a lot of the weapons on the left hand side, and then as columns you see a lot of targets that can be shot that we have seen from 10th edition, including the Armiger and Canis Rex, like a big Imperial Knight. The comma in the table, for example, 10,7 means 10.7. The comma is a decimal point, so don't get confused by that. So we see first the Demon Breath Thermal Cannon that has a short range on 24 inches. It has a damage D6, but if you go to the Melta, is a Melta 6, so basically when you come into 12-inch range, you get D6 +6 damage, and this basically skyrockets. You see the damage output versus vehicles, so you see like 16 wounds on a Rhino, or 12 wounds on a Repulsor, 7 wounds on a Canis Rex with his 5+ invul and 6+ Feel No Pain, 9 wounds on an armiger, but you have to be at 12 inches to get this high damage. You see, at 24 inch, not as good damage output, and of course with this type of weapon is not very efficient versus infantry, as you would expect. Then moving on to the Despoiler Gatling Cannon that comes paired with a heavy Dark Flamer. So the Despoiler Gatling Cannon has a juicy 18 attacks, strength 6, AP -2, damage 2, and this, as you can see, as expected, you can deal a lot of damage versus infantry, and especially damage to intercessors. You would be wiping 5 of those from range, and you can add the heavy Dark Flamer auto hits at short range. But as you can see, even the Despoiler Gatling Cannon with 18 shots, you can do a lot versus vehicles with strength 6, and no special rules as auto wounding and things like that. And then we move to another thing very discussed in the in the forums, the Despoiler Battle Cannon. At 72 inches, you get D6 plus 3 shots, so on average 6.5 shots. If you come into 36 inches, which is quite reasonable, you will be getting 2d6 plus 6 shots, so that's 13 shots on average, and you can be lucky to get more. So you see here, this is with a green color here, this is the most damaging for Terminators. So if you have 2 of those, you could be making 14 wounds on Terminators, almost wiping a whole squad. So with a free roll, you would be probably able to do so. And you can see also at 36 inch, you can do some damage on vehicles as well, a little bit better than the Demon Breath Thermal Cannon at 24 inches, but not when the Thermal Cannon comes into close range. Finally, the Diabolus Heavy Stubber and the Demon Breath Meltagun, just a little bit of damage output. The Heavy Stubber at 36 inches adds a little bit of damage. And then when looking at the melee options, we have either the Reaper Chainsword or the Warp Strike Claw, or a combination of those two, and then you don't have any shooting basically. But if you look at the damage output, the Warp Strike Claw overall has better damage output versus most of the targets. With the strike, this is where you get your most damage versus all the vehicles and enemy knights and things like that. With the sweep, you can do the best damage versus Terminators and Blight Lords with the AP -2, damage 3. And the only place where the Reaper Chainsword would be better than the Warp Strike Claw is versus Chaff Infantry and 2-wound Marines like Intercessors. But I guess it would be better for the Despoiler, if you want to add melee, to take a Warp Strike Claw together with whatever Suju option you would like. Now moving on to the Abominant, the Desecrator weapons, the damage output. We started with the Abominant here. The Volkite Combustor with devastating wounds is quite an all-round weapon. Almost 5-6 wounds on average, regardless of the enemy here, with a strength 12 and AP 0. But 6 is to wound, give you 3 mortal wounds. So you get quite a lot damage output, or very similar damage output across all enemy targets. When we move into melee, we have the Electro Scourge and the Bale Mace. The Electro Scourge quite strong against Terminators, AP -2, damage 3, sustained hits, and 9 attacks, better than the Warp Strike Claw Sweep. As we saw previously, that's 8 attacks with no sustained hits here, so we get a bit more damage. So instead of 6-7 wounds on Terminators, we get 9-10 wounds on the Terminators. And then we are moving on to the Desecrator with a Laser Destructor that can do quite a lot of damage already from 72 inches. Doesn't need to come close. Strength 18 and damage d6 plus 3 with the 3 attacks, hitting on 2s. So here you can see 13 wounds on a Rhino, 11 wounds on a Repulsor, 6 wounds on a big Imperial Knight. Not as good, but you can be out of harm's way from 72 inches, let's say. And then the Warp Strike Claw, as we saw also for the Despoiler, good versus vehicles as the best option here. Finally, I chose here to compare Desecrator versus Canis Rex that we saw from the from the Imperial Knights faction focus. So the Desecrator, he uses the laser destructure at range. The Heavy Stubber and the Demon Breath Meltagun add a little bit of shooting if he comes closer by, and then he's using his strike profile into melee with his claw. You can see the damage he's doing at 72 inches. He's doing 6 wounds on Canis Rex. Not a lot if you consider that Canis Rex has 22 wounds to take from. If he's a bit closer, 12 inch, then you do a little bit more. The Stubber and the Demon Breath Meltagun don't add a lot. And in melee, he's almost doing 10 wounds with the strike profile of the claw. But again, not super much damage. He can't, if he is at 12 inches, shoots and then charges and does damage, he cannot kill the Canis Rex. If Canis is battle shocked and we are after turn, let's say 3, the damage is improved. +1 to wound helps the Desecrator do some more damage. He can be doing 7-8 wounds from distance. He can be doing 12 wounds in melee. In this case, he can almost kill the Canis Rex if Canis Rex in some way has been forced to take battle shock test and failed it. But I guess for such a big target, your opponent probably will use a command point to avoid taking the test. Now looking at Canis Rex, he has the last impulsor at low intensity from 36 inches, the high intensity at 24, and then he has the multi-laser to add a little bit of shooting. If he has at 36-inch range, he can't really hurt the Desecrator, only 3.5 wounds from range. If he moves on to 24-inch, he can use the high intensity. He's doing 9 wounds, so more damage than the Desecrator can do from that type of range. And then when he comes into melee, he really destroys the Desecrator with a freedom hand. The strike, 34 wounds, basically, yeah, tearing it apart, taking the Desecrator's lunch money if he can come into melee. Of course, here I'm assuming the Canis Rex is re-rolling once to hit and once to wound per Imperial Knights rules, and has the 6+ feel no pain. If Canis Rex is battle shocked and it's more than turn 3, he's at -1 to hit. So instead of 2 pluses, he will be hitting on 3 pluses, so he can do less damage. But even so, in melee, he would be taking out the Desecrator. Finally, the summary and final thoughts. Pity that we didn't see a Wardog. I would expect that he's quite close to an Armiger with toughness 10. We have seen so far similar baseline stats for all the 3 big knights revealed, so toughness 12 and 22 wounds. I think the Chaos Knights, we got some decent army rules and detachment rules. They are playing on the new Battleshock mechanic. They feel cohesive and well working together. And Battleshock, as I saw Mr. Grothworks write on his post, I think it's very correct what he's writing there, that it's a luck-based. Let's say you need your opponent to fail the tests so you get the advantage. The Imperial Knights, they get the rerolls for free, let's say every turn. But the Battleshock, on the other hand, could give a high payout. So it's a bit more of a luck-based, but it feels at least thematic that you have these big knights and they are scaring the opponent. They are missing the Battleshock, and then as the Chaos Knights, they see the weakness on the table, they take full advantage of it. We see the weapons overall for the Chaos Knights increase in strength, so they can do some damage versus vehicles and other knights, but get less special abilities. I would appreciate it a little bit more, devastating wounds or stuff like that, more lethal hits. I don't know, but compared to what the weapons we saw for the Imperial Knights, they seem to be getting a little bit more special flavor rules for their weapons. So all in all, I think the Imperial Knight rules are overall stronger, but the Chaos Knights feel also as strong, and I think it will work. They could work, and of course there is a lot more rules for us to see. No word on aligned Dreadblades. That would be really interesting, especially for me. I have so many Chaos factions, and I would like to be able to add some Dreadblades to my Death card or Thousand Suns or some of my other factions. But this concludes the video. What do you think about the Chaos Knights faction? Are you optimistic? And yeah, how are you planning to play them? If you want to, please leave a comment. If you want to discuss further, please visit my Discord channel, link in the description. You can also visit my Patreon page, a YouTube member, if you want to support my efforts trying to give you all the analysis and thoroughly looking at all the stats and weapons that we see. So with these words, GeneralJannis signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.